It's got these really lovely, like, you know, sprayed edges, and I'm not someone who buys books with sprayed edges. I just don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how to handle this book. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leandra the TBR0, and I am going to be covering my top 10 reads of September and October. I'm recording this on the 31st of October, so this is updated. I know exactly how many books I read in October, and oh boy, have I read a lot in the last 2 months. So I ended up reading 34 books in the last 2 months, and that is a lot. I read 15 in September, and I've racked up 19 in October. Honestly, it's been a good mix of physical, ebook, and audio, and I do attribute this to the fact that I've been hosting TBR Harvest in October, so I was determined. I ended up reading a lot. I vlogged a lot too, which is not something I really do very often. I'm trying to get more into that, but anyways, the whole plan is that I am very tired of trying to do massive wrap-ups that just exhaust me, and I would rather talk about the books that I absolutely loved, the books that I can wholeheartedly recommend to you all, and so we're gonna do my top 10, and I'm really excited because I love every single one of these books. But first and foremost, let's go through some stats because I do think it's interesting and it reflects how strong my last 2 months of reading have been. So as mentioned, I'd finished 34 books. Now I started 37. There were 3 DNFs throughout the past 2 months, and that means that my ratio, the proportions, were 92% finished, 8% not finished. Could that have been higher for the DNFs? Yeah, there were some books that I really probably didn't need to finish, but I'm not mad at it, especially because in reality, my average star rating is quite high. It's one of my highest among these 2 months compared to any other check-in I've had. So I was very fortunate. I was mostly picking up books that I loved. With that said, I do see some outliers. There's a reason for why my average star rating is so high, and it's partially because I read a few manga series that I absolutely adore. I got to read their continuations. They include Cat on the Hero's Lap as well as Cat Plus Gamer. Both of those throughout their entire series have always received 5 stars from me, so I feel like it does skew the results a little bit because they're just really lovely palette cleansers for me. I also had one reread, which was Bright Storm by Vashti Hardy. This got 5 stars the first time I read it. Nothing changed the second time, and so 3 5 stars really did amp up that average star rating, but like I wouldn't change a thing. One statistic that I think is really fascinating is the number of new to me authors that I've experienced over the 34 books that I read. I read 19 new to me authors out of 34. That's about 56%, and that's actually pretty low. I usually only read new to me authors. Usually it's about like 75% to 80% of the time I'm only reading an author that I've never heard of before because I'm really terrible about returning to authors that I've loved before. I don't know why, but I'm getting better about it, as you can see, because about almost half the reads that I picked up were from authors I'd read from before. So like, good job, Leandra, you're getting better. And then what you'll notice probably reflected in my top 10 is that my top genres for the past 2 months have been mystery and horror. That's not a surprise. We ended up getting into spooky season, so that obviously correlated with the fact that I would pick up more spooky reads, so mystery thriller, horror, and I can see myself stepping away from that a little bit. I'm gonna always read mysteries, that's always gonna be my top genre, but as far as horror, I think I'm gonna probably take a break, a little bit less as far as November and December go, but we'll see what happens. Maybe the mood will strike me and I will continue to want to scare myself with my books. And now for the top 10. So I'm gonna go in descending order? Ascending order? I don't know, whatever it is. I'm going from 10th to 1st. That's what you need to know. My 10th favorite book for September and October is Full Speed to a Crash Landing by Beth Revis. This was my first experience with the author. It is a part of what I'm assuming is going to be a trilogy of this rom-com heist, so sci-fi space type of novella series, and I tried it on a whim. It ended up coming on my radar because the second book is coming out this, early winter, and it looked really good. I was excited to see like a sci-fi heist because that really appeals to me. I've realized I've neglected sci-fi this year and I really want to remedy that, but I just had so much fun. It really surprised me. It was a book that grew on me, which is something to say when you're talking about a novella. It's not very long, and yet what really sold me was the ending. I was so impressed. I feel like the main character, Ava, just is one that you underestimate, and then when you really see how clever she is, you appreciate the narrative so much more. And it was really fun. I can't wait to continue with book 2 and watch the romance that she has with her counterpart, you know, grow a little bit more. My 9th favorite book was The Examiner by Janice Hallett, another book that is a new to me author. And this one I was really nervous about because I know that there are some people here on booktube across social media platforms that really love her, but she's also someone who just doesn't get as much readership as far as number of reviews on like Goodreads, Storygraph. But this one really intrigued me because it's completely mixed media, something that she's well known for, and it follows 6 students in this master's program. I love an academic setting, and you try to figure out who, if anyone, was murdered. And I really loved that added to the mystery as you were sifting through text messages, digital diaries, and emails, because you weren't just asking, is there a murder? But if there was, which one of these people is the victim? And it does get bonkers. Like by the end, it's just absolute insanity. But there were some twists, some reveals that I was really impressed by. And by that point, I was so invested that I was like, okay, you know what? I'll take it. I actually don't mind it. Number 8 on this list is The Night Guest by Hildur Knudsendotter. She is an Icelandic author, so this was a translation, and it is a horror novella. So the second novella on this list. I'm kind of surprised by that too. I mean, I don't tend to read chunky reads, but I also don't tend to read novellas very often. This one is quite spooky. It follows a woman who can't sleep, and she begins to realize that her body is moving, doing things while she's asleep, and that scares her, and she's wondering if it's linked to her sister's death not long ago. And it's very eerie. You don't see much on page, but it's the fact that you know things have happened. You see the results of actions done while she was asleep, and it's kind of mind-blowing. The ending is very ambiguous, which will not work for everyone. There is also cat death as well as other deaths, so just keep that in mind. That is a trigger for a lot of people, and it typically is for me, but because it wasn't on page and the purpose behind it felt right to me, I understood why the author took those lengths, kind of crossed those lines. Number 7 is Ruin Road by Lamar Giles. We're continuing with the theme of horror, and this time it's YA. Another surprise, I'm telling you. I took chances in September and October, and they paid off for the most part. So as I said, this is YA horror. It was the first experience I had with this author, even though he's not a debut author. He has published before. He published The Getaway, a book that I thought about reading, but I hesitated. The cover freaked me out. Also, YA just doesn't usually work for me, but this one was really thoughtful. I found the twist, the kind of interpretation of making a deal with the devil, really fascinating. Also, the discussions of fear, both healthy fear and fear that you should listen to. It was so impactful. This one also comes with a content warning for parent death as well as terminal illness, but it's so worth it. I'm so glad that this is for a YA audience, because I could see a lot of YA readers gravitating towards this and just taking so many important social commentary aspects from this book. 6th on my list is Blameless by Gail Carriger. I cannot shut up about this series. The further I get into it, it's just become a comfort read at this point, and I feel as though, it sounds really strange, I promise it's not like the first time I've ever continued a series, but in continuing with this, every time I return to Alexia Terabody, I'm like, I understand why people take comfort in series, why they enjoy continuing to follow characters. I know that's crazy, it doesn't make any sense, but I really love seeing the journey and how each book is stacking on top of each other. This time we have Alexia going to Italy, which was really interesting, interacting with different types of characters. The world is becoming ever more rich with textures, with layers, as far as like social etiquette, the types of creatures, the types of like paranormal and supernatural entities we're interacting with. It's a delight. It's an actual delight. I love the Victorian setting as well, so it can do no wrong. And now we're breaking into the top 5. My 5th favorite book of the past 2 months was The Secret Place by Tana French, and this author has just pretty much enveloped my life. It's the 3rd time I've read a Tana French this year, and I already plan on reading The Hunter within the next month, so it's the year of Tana. I've said it once, I'm gonna say it again, and what's crazy is every time I read her, she gets better for me. The first time I read her was In the Woods, and I really was okay with that. I was impressed by her writing. I could see potential. It was also her debut book, but the ending really did not satisfy me, and I gave it a 3.5. But every other book I read by her now, The Secret Place, and before that, The Searcher, I'm like, this woman can write. She can really grip you. It's far more literary, and the mystery is almost the catalyst to get us into these people's lives, but there are so many other things that take importance over the mystery. It's really interesting, to be honest. She's kind of an anomaly for me, and I hope she just continues doing what she's doing because she's very different from any type of mystery and suspense writer that I've experienced. But The Secret Place is another academic setting, so you're going to see a trend, and there's one more, if I'm remembering correctly, that is also academic setting, so that's also a trend. I really like that setting, and this is following young girls at a boarding school. There was a mysterious death the year before. It went cold, and certain circumstances, certain evidence comes to discovery the following year to bring the police back to the grounds, and it takes place in one day, which I love. A condensed timeline, the fact that there is a time-sensitive narrative. I love the fact that it happened in one day. It was so good. Remember that additional academic setting I mentioned? Well, it's taken my 4th spot. So Gaudy Night by Dorothy L. Sayers, the 3rd book that has an academic setting on this list, and this time it's at a college. So Gaudy Night is a Golden Age detective fiction novel. It's really, really well loved, and Dorothy L. Sayers is so well respected in the Golden Age detective fiction community, and I have to admit that this book is the first book to really win me over. I've only tried her one other time, Whose Body, which is also a Lord Peter Wimsey book. It's the first book in the series, whereas Gaudy Night, maybe 6th, I can't remember, but obviously there was a significant gap. There were multiple books that I skipped to read Gaudy Night for my job with She Done It, and as is typical with mysteries, in the traditional form, you can read them in any order. It should not really impact you too much, even though there are some small overarching elements that go into Gaudy Night from past books. It didn't deter me, and I really loved it. I went in with not very high expectations, more nerves and anxiety than anything else, but Dorothy L. Sayers did such a great job putting us in the setting of, Oxford, of being surrounded by these characters, these women who are both in college and out of college, reflecting on women's education, and it was brilliant. That's all I can say. And it's a murderless book. There isn't a murder that occurs, which is pretty impressive for a mystery that my copy was 450 pages. In fact, I haven't been grabbing these books. I'm sorry, future Leandra, editing Leandra, because you're going to have to put them up on the screen. But this is my copy. You can see that I tabbed it when I was doing research for the job. And yeah, it's a mass paperback, but look how the writing is. 450 something pages. And then there were 3 in my top 3. We'll start off with Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. This is the 2nd book in the Fallen God series. Let me grab this book really quickly. Pardon the interruption. It follows numerous characters. It's definitely a Scooby Gang ragtag group. This time around, though, they are going off in different directions. Each character seems to have its own goal in mind. They have their own conflicts that they have to resolve on their own, but it's still really well done. It's still extremely fast-paced. I was so invested in Anara, in Skedeketh, and Kissen, even Elo, who, granted, the only reason why I care about him is his relation to the other 3 characters. And I will say, though, that Godkiller is it's my book. I think Godkiller is amazing, and Sunbringer is also amazing, but just as if I had to compare in the series, I think I do prefer Godkiller a little bit more. I'm still excited for book 3 so much. It's still my 3rd favorite book in the past 2 months, and I was really lucky to buddy read it with Danny from Danny Dabbles, because the last time I tried to buddy read this, it was before the Amazing Readathon. I had tried to join Julie and Brittany, and I literally could not keep up. I was already in the Amazing Readathon mode that I could not focus on this book in May. So yeah, I was very happy to finally take this off my purchased shelves. Book number 2, it just came in the mail. Let me get my copy. Okay, so the 2nd favorite book of September and October was The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands by Sarah Brooks. This one I also buddy read with Danny, and I loved it so much. I had borrowed my copy from the library, and I was thinking, you know what? I don't have to add it to my collection anytime soon, but let me just check Pango Books, see if there is, a lightly, gently loved copy that I could buy secondhand, give this book another chance, to have a home, which would be mine. And when I went on Pango Books, this book had only been posted for 2 hours, and it is the Broken Binding Special Edition. I got this for 25 bucks. I'm being transparent about that because I'm astonished. So look how gorgeous this is. It has like a nice like plastic covering to protect it. It's got these really lovely like, you know, sprayed edges, and I'm not someone who buys books with sprayed edges. I just don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how to handle this book. But I'm so excited. And because of that, because it's a special edition from Birthing Bindings, I'm also like so fortunate to have a signed edition. It's number 780 in a 1500, you know, copies edition of the printing. And I'm really overwhelmed, and I haven't even told you what the book is about. Like, look at that. Oh gosh. I love train settings as well. So I was a sucker for this one immediately. It follows also multiple POVs. You can tell that that's something I really appreciate. And it's on one train journey. Again, another condensed timeline. And these characters are in 1899 Eastern Asia, and they are going from Beijing to Moscow, traveling through the wastelands, this area that has been cordoned off because the flora and fauna are ever changing, mutating, and it's deemed quite dangerous. There's also this description of wasteland sickness. So this one train, the Trans-Siberian Company, is the only ones who have this train route, and there's just certain mysterious happenings on the train. Everyone has their own motivations, and something happened 10 months prior that forced the train to stop traveling for 10 months. So it's the first time they've left the station since those events, and no one on the train previously remembers what happened 10 months ago. It's really beautifully written. It's a debut, and I'm really impressed by that because the author just writes really beautifully and thoughtfully, and I love when we're talking about dangerous flora and fauna. And I know that I've talked about Annihilation on this channel, and it just didn't do it for me. It just wasn't what I wanted. Like, the flora and fauna were awesome, but like the fact that there was like no narrative structure just ended up frustrating me in the end. Whereas this one gave me what I needed, and it had so many elements, tropes, and plot devices that I really love. So I'm so happy to have this like really gorgeous edition. I understand the hype about like special editions now. And that book isn't even my top book of the past 2 months. My number one spot will go to Grave Expectations by Alice Bell. I've talked about this book so much, and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I mean, you can look at Goodreads and Storygraph to show that, even though I do think that the ratings are a little bit low. Some people have like weird criticisms. Like, one person gave it 1 star because there's too much cursing. Okay, weird, but you have your preference. I don't know if I'd give it 1 star for that. So obviously I'm a little bitter and very defensive of this book, but it's so fun. It's a paranormal mystery. It does give like cozy, comfy vibes due to the fact that we have a Scooby gang. We have our amateur sleuth who can see ghosts, and she's assisted by 2 others, and they are trying to solve the murder of someone who they don't even know. So we also have an unknown identity of the victim, another thing I really love to see in mysteries, and they have to piece together a timeline in which half of them weren't even there for the events that took place, and they don't know who ended up going missing and dying on that night. So it was so funny. I'm so excited for the second book, Displeasure Island. I'm coming for you in November. I'm determined to read you. And those are my top 10 for September and October. They are all books that I can highly recommend, and I feel pretty happy with the fact that there is some variety. We had a YA option, I had horror, I had mystery, I did have a sci-fi space opera with a little bit of romance. We had fantasy, some paranormal elements, so pretty well-rounded, I would say, and a great split as far as like new to me authors, debut authors. 6 of the top 10 were new to me authors, meaning that 4 were veterans. I'm pretty happy with that. And 3 out of the top 10 were debut authors, which is great because I really like seeing that I'm still supporting new authors, trying them, and I can, start at their beginning, and I'll have to keep an eye on them as they publish more works in the future. So honestly, yeah, no notes. I'm really happy with the results, and I don't think I could have had a better 2 months if I tried. So thanks everyone so much for getting to the end. Thank you to my Manor guests. I really do appreciate you, whether you were a sleuth, a witness, a suspect, or a corpse. And also, if you're interested in seeing how I read these books. A few of them were featured in my most recent vlog where I had other booktubers choose my page count every single day, and it was a train wreck. Thanks everyone so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!